So hello, and welcome to our second video book review.
Hello, Maria,
Um,
and thank you very much for inviting me to share this with you and with members of the community and spiritual directors associated with the centre.
Wonderful. Well, you are very specially welcome, John Francis, because you are a long-standing member of our community and also a friend of the community. And we very much appreciate and esteem you being with us. John Francis joins me today to talk about his latest book. Here it is, Heart of My Own Heart, and with a strapline, Deepening Life with Christ. Heart of My Own Heart has been published by Canterberry Press, and I hope you agree with me, it is a most beautiful cover that I have found in and of itself inspiring. Now, John Francis, you are a priest, a spiritual director, and an author. And for 25 years, you were a First Order Anglican Franciscan. I hope I've got that right.
Yes.
Now, having been released from your vows in 2002, when you were actually a rector of an East London parish, you went on to teach on the London course in spiritual direction until 2018. In fact, you were there when the course then became Encounter, and I have very fond memories of you being my tutor in year one. Of course, you also devised and delivered the 6-month course Exploring Christian Spirituality, again for the Centre. Nowadays, you are a Third Order Franciscan. And from what you have told me, you dedicate most of your time to offering spiritual direction and pastoral supervision, as well as leading retreats. So I hope I got that right. Is there anything else
Not
that
at
you
all.
would like to
No,
add?
no. Thank you.
Wonderful. Now, as I read Heart of My Own Heart, it felt just like that, an invitation to deepen my life with Christ, particularly as illuminated by the Sacred Heart. So, John Francis, my first question to you is this. When did the Sacred Heart begin to attract you?
Hmm, hmm. I actually find that quite difficult to answer because it feels as if it's been around for a long time, but kind of emerged. I think there was a convent of the Sacred Heart near where I lived, and as a
Mm,
child, I'd go past on the bus with my mum and gaze out of the window at this big statue in the grounds and say to, "What's that?" Being a Baptist, she wasn't quite sure.
yeah.
And then it kept popping up and bubbling up. I think it was probably during COVID, strangely enough, that it resurfaced to quite an extent because people remember during that time, people often, in greeting each other, made a sort of finger heart. I can't remember how it goes exactly, but a bit like that.
Yes, like that. Yeah.
And Valentine's cards got sent with hearts on them. And I
Mm,
thought, this is okay, but actually, the Sacred Heart speaks much more profoundly of what Christians understand by
mm,
love.
mm,
And that was one of the kind of triggers, I suppose, which set me off to write the book.
mm. Thank you, John Francis. And indeed, it is deep and wide, something that I've really appreciated. You seem to have covered so many aspects of the Sacred Heart. Now, we are in the season of hearts. As we speak, we're coming up to Valentine's. So, what would you say? I'm curious, John Francis, about the difference between the way a Valentine heart mirrors love and the way the Sacred Heart does this.
We all like receiving Valentine's cards. Well, when we were younger, we liked receiving Valentine's cards. We might be a bit worried, perhaps now, if we received one for various reasons. But I think all of us would agree that really this Valentine's heart is quite it's a lovely thing, but it's quite superficial. You know, you get
Mhm.
them, you get that warm glow, and then you meet the person, and you actually have to encounter what love is about. And that can be a bloody, difficult, painful, stripping process, of course. If it wasn't, there might be something wrong with it. And I think, therefore, that the image of the Sacred Heart, so sadly dismissed by various people, the image of the Sacred Heart actually speaks quite profoundly of the essence of love as Christians understand it.
Mhm.
Um, it's quite easy to dismiss it as, oh, it's too remote, too emotional and bloodthirsty, not very Anglican, for example. But I think that suggests that there is a depth to it that some don't quite like to approach.
Mhm.
And that's one of the
Yeah,
reasons why I think that the Sacred Heart is more important than the Valentine's Heart.
Valentine's Heart. Thank you for that. To me, it speaks of a sacrifice
Hmm.
unto
Yeah,
death.
yeah,
That is at the heart, isn't it, of
yeah,
our faith
yeah,
and our way into life. You
yes,
cannot but go through it
yeah,
in order to know, to truly know
yeah.
life and the life of the Spirit. So, is there any particular aspect or aspects of the heart that particularly speak to you? What has drawn you so profoundly? Or perhaps some of the aspects in your book that particularly surprised you or spoke to you?
Well, I think that one of the things that did come as a surprise in a way was the connection of the Sacred Heart with the environment, with the cosmos,
Mhm. Yes.
which is what the last chapter is concerns. And it was only when I came to read some of the works of Theodor Chardin, the great Jesuit, early 20th century Jesuit
Mhm.
paleontologist, that I came to discover how a man, a great scientist, you know, actually had a profound interest in the Sacred Heart because he saw it at the heart of creation. And the reason he did that is that, you know, it's that one commandment, that first commandment, we can so often overlook. You shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, mind, and
Mm.
strength.
Yeah.
So he recognized that love was at the heart of the cosmos,
Mhm.
and therefore the Sacred Heart, because it speaks of the sacrifice of love, as you say, is at the heart of the cosmos. One just needs to read his book. But that was one of the things that surprised me.
Yeah.
It didn't
Yeah.
surprise me that the image itself is controversial, but the more I looked at the image and considered it, uh, I realized just how important images are to us. I think
Mm.
anybody involved in spiritual direction will have made use of images at different points. And I'm not suggesting that people should immediately go out and offer an image of the Sacred Heart to all their directees. Um, but I think that the image does speak to us.
Mhm.
And I know I've found it of quite of a lot of use. The other thing, Maria, if I
Yeah.
may, is
Of
to
course.
recognize how I think it it speaks particularly to priestly spirituality.
Mm.
And as somebody who directs quite a number of clergy, um, one of the things I find myself having to do is to try and shift them away from church
Mhm.
to the
Into
heart of their
that.
faith.
Yes. Yes.
And that means encouraging them to encounter that heart from their own heart. And that can be quite difficult.
Thank
So
you, John
that was
Francis.
the other
Yes,
thing. That,
that's it leads us very naturally into our my final question, which came really because I noticed that every one of your chapters finishes with an invitation
yeah,
to meditate, to ponder some questions, and to do some prayer practices too. So we are a community of spiritual directors. So, how does the Sacred Heart help in spiritual direction? I know you've already started in terms of the use of images, but how else might it help, indeed, the invitation to deepen our life with Christ.
And I think it's in that um, subheading, because unless the director is deepening their life with Christ, unless they are reflecting on that love which draws them,
Yeah.
then their own ministry as a director, their apostolate as a director, will be diminished.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think that I mean, there is an appendix on the essence of spiritual direction, and
Yes.
directions often mentioned in the book. You might
Mm.
need to take a person might need to take this matter to spiritual direction.
Mm.
So I think primarily it's in that matter of the way in which we as directors need to primarily be centered into deepening our faith and our life in Christ.
Indeed, it's a prerequisite, isn't it, and an
Yeah,
absolute necessity
yeah,
if we are to invite others to do the same for
yeah.
themselves. And
And one comes across that particularly in the works of people like um, St. Francis de Sales and
mhm,
that great French school of spirituality. Francis de Sales was a great spiritual director.
mhm,
And again, I talk a bit about that French school, which can
yeah.
be helpful for directors.
Well, John Francis, thank you. Thank you for taking the time to talk to me and to the community about Heart of My Own Heart. We will leave all the details below on how anybody who's interested may get hold of the book, but also details of your website called itself The Restless Heart. And if you want to find it, just type in as one word, johnfrancisfriendship.co.uk. But for now, let us take our leave. And again, with heartfelt thank you. And thank you for reminding me, as when you were my tutor, you did a session on Encounter on icons. And the importance of image really opened up for me at that point. And for that, I am grateful, as well as for encountering you again this evening. Thank
Thank you,
you.
Maria. Thank you, and God bless to everybody.
Bye bye.
Goodbye.